Okay. Hello, hello. Hello out there, everybody. How's it going? I am Aaron from Solace, back with you for yet another office hours. It is September I don't even know, what is it? September the 26th. I'm coming at you live from Solace headquarters here in Ottawa, Canada. It's 9:30 a.m. on Tuesday. And yeah, today I am very special to have a special guest, my colleague Andrew MacKenzie, and we're going to be talking about event mesh connectors. Andrew, let's bring you in here. Hello.
Hello. I'm
Good
coming to you
morning.
live from my basement in Ottawa. So,
Yeah, well,
so not
yeah,
quite in the office like yourself today.
we are pretty close though. You probably could have come in and we could have like maybe had like a two split screen thing going on here. But yeah, it's pretty
Yeah.
quiet here. Not Wednesdays are the big days here at Solace headquarters. Uh, post pandemic. But I've seen
Even
a
I,
few
even
people
I
this
come
morning, which
even
is
I come in sometimes on Wednesdays.
oh yeah. All right.
I'm
Well, I'm in
allergic to
town
the
for just a
office.
little bit longer before I head back out to Asia. But yeah, I'm happy to be here. Why don't you introduce yourself, Andrew?
Sure. Andrew MacKenzie, I'm a principal product manager here at Solace. I've been here about 5.5 years.
Hmm.
My primary sort of portfolio is connectors, so all things connector. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. Long background in enterprise software. I've been doing this for over 30 years now. Yeah, happy to talk to you today about our great connectors.
Are we gonna do a little bit of a history quiz as well? Are we gonna like mention like hybrid edge or anything like that, or or
Maybe not.
if we can ignore the past and just go straight into the brand new
we
cool
have we
toys
have
that
a
we've got?
varied offering in terms of connectors, and we're going to talk more about the latest and less about the history. How about that?
That's good. That's good. Solace. I mean, for as long as Solace has existed, being a data transport kind of mechanism, people have been looking for easy ways to kind of just pile data on, get data off.
Sure.
Um, in the old days, it was a lot of custom code, obviously, very kind of whether it's files or market data or anything. But in today's modern world of kind of just more low code, no code, easy integration kind of stuff, people just want ways to kind of say click, 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 go bring this to here, go to there, and do some transforms maybe, or just do some, and I guess that's what we're helping customers do, right? To make it just
For
easy
sure,
to simplify
yeah.
this stuff.
I have a couple of slides on this. I think
Sure, let's
I'd probably get
let's start
fired
with some
if I don't give
slides.
a couple of slides. Pretty sure that
you, won't,
it's
you won't get
for
fired
for
on here.
for you dev advocates. It's actually probably not cool that you give presentations in PowerPoint, but for us
No,
product
I love
managers,
PowerPoint. I'm a
you
big
have to do
PowerPoint
it.
fan. But before we jump into the slides, I just want to say hello and thanks to everybody that is out there. We are live on LinkedIn and YouTube and Twitter, and also on our Solace community homepage. We're trying something new where we're actually streaming this live to the Solace community. So if you happen to be watching from there, cool. Say hello, say where you're joining us from. Put it up in the chat. I'm happy to say hello.
Wow, Hong Kong
Running
and
Roach, good
Bangkok so
evening
far.
to you, sir. I hope things are going well. Hello from Hong Kong. Hopefully, I might be there in a couple in a month or so. So, hope you're doing all right. Ari, hello. Tuning in from Bangkok today. Excellent. Good evening. Hope it's not too late there. Uh, Watching us before bed. Yeah, come say hi to Ottawa folks here, to Asia folks online. Um, hey, Deshant, are you in the office? Can you hear me? He sits right over there. How's it going, Deshant? All right, Andrew, let's share your slides here and let's get going. But yeah, everybody out there, please ask some questions. That's why we're here. We're
Sure.
happy to tell you all about it, but we want your questions. We want your feedback. And so,
Yeah,
and you got Andrew here to.
I'm a pretty informal person, so feel free to jump in with questions at any point.
Yeah,
I obviously don't want to just sit here and talk to you. I would like to converse with you. How about that instead? How about that?
that's right.
So,
Hi, Alessandro. Hello from Italy. Hello, hello. All right,
hello,
Andrew, take it away.
Alexander. Yeah, no problem. So I guess the why of connectors, right? So why would you need connectors if we have this great EDA platform at Solace? Well, so if you can envision the platform being centric around the event mesh, right? So the brokers are moving data or moving events from place to place on the event mesh, and it is sort of the central hub of what the platform is based on, with the brokers
Mm-hmm.
feeding and so onboarding and offboarding through the brokers. But At the periphery, let me see. Sorry, my build didn't work there.
Oh, you got some animations? They're not clicking
Well,
through?
I just the one. It's not working. Okay.
If that's the only thing that goes wrong today, we're going to be doing fine, I think. So hopefully PowerPoint didn't just crash you either.
There we
We
go.
go.
Look
Look
at
at that.
that.
Beautiful. Look at all those logos.
Right. So,
wow.
but then we have the other sort of non-Solace services at the edge of the mesh, right? And a lot of those may be event enabled. Like another message broker is definitely, messaging at least, if not event driven. And then you also have, databases, you have cloud data services, you have iPaaS, you have devices. So there's a need to sort of have these edge services be able to onboard or ingress events to the event mesh, and then
On-ramp.
egress them, or off. We like to call them on ramps and off ramps.
Yeah.
Right. So
I don't know where that term came from, but I like it actually. It's kind of like
I don't want to be. I don't want to toot my own horn, but it was me.
Oh.
I distinctly remember creating a connector slide at some point while we were sort of coming up with this whole thing, and I actually had a GIF of an on ramp and an off ramp. So
well,
it was all me.
The British call it them slip roads. Like they take the slip road to the highway, to the motorway. So I don't know. Hopefully it translates outside of North America. People.
So then you pull over and grab your picnic lunch from the boot.
No,
right?
That's what it.
Yeah.
Oh, the boot. Yeah, that's right.
I love that.
Sorry.
We digress. So these edge services, some of them are event enabled, like I said, but others, like databases, are not. And so you might have a need to onboard some of this data. So a perfect example of that is something like change data capture from a database, right? So we have a connector for Debezium, allows you to connect to a relational database, Mongo as well, but relational in general. And instead of a static select statement or whatever like that, it reads the bin logs or the transaction logs or the tables, the CDC tables, whatever the database employs for change data capture, and then it brings those into the event mesh via our connector by turning those insert, update, and delete statements or transactions into events that then become first-class citizens on the event mesh, and they can be distributed around and then offboarded into analytics or however you need to use those events that represent changes within your operational databases.
Or another database on the other end that maybe you're kind of doing. You could use it for
application,
I assume.
I don't think that this is. I don't think the Debezium connector is the best way to do database replication. Sure. There's definitely specialized tools to do that, like a click replicate or something like that. But it does take that technology. I mean, CDC technology was mostly done to be able to replicate databases. Mm-hmm. But by having the connector be the endpoint being onboarding onto the event mesh, then you can use that event however you do need it, right? You might be doing, like, maybe you have a database of orders, right? And the new orders or the updated orders become events, and then you're using those within an orders analytics application up in AWS or something like that, right? So there's definitely. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, by putting whatever kind of specific events or those database events onto the mesh, you can then do whatever you want with it, right? Pick and choose.
Exactly. Once it's onto the mesh, you have unlimited capabilities because of the whole pub/sub nature of those events, right? And then, like, an egress example would be something like taking events from the event mesh and then putting them into something like Snowflake. So we have a Snowflake connector that does both the traditional Snowpipe small batch ingestion, but it also has the brand new streaming API that Snowflake came out with, which is better suited to a real-time type of event system like we present. So that's taking events from the event mesh and then ingressing into, or egressing from the event mesh and ingress into the Snowflake store. So those are two great examples, and they both happen to involve databases, which are traditionally, like I said, not really event-enabled services. but these connectors and then the various APIs that they connect to event enable those services into something that can be better integrated with your event-driven architecture.
Right. So, quick pause there so you can get a drink of water. Speaking of Snowflake, our colleague Nicholas is saying hello from New York. Hey, Nicholas, how's it going?
Hey,
Shoaib
Nick.
from UAE. Excellent. Hello.
Wow.
Good afternoon, I guess, kind of mid-afternoon there. How you doing? And Phil. How you doing,
Did
Phil?
Phil join in time to hear our boot
A
comments
boot?
about
A boot? Maybe. I don't know. He can watch it on the
on ramps and
replay.
off ramps in the UK?
That's
Because
right. Yeah. Slip
that's right
roads.
up his
Yeah.
alley
He can.
there.
And one more. Rutha from India. Hello. Good evening. Welcome to the office hours. Happy to have you here. So, all right. So we have. So you've talked about a couple databases. I mean, I'm assuming you can connect to other things, right? We're connecting to lots of different things. So
Yeah. So what I primarily wanted to talk about today, we have various different types of connectors, and I don't want to go too deep into those today. Although we will mention we do have a fairly high uptake of our iPaaS connectors. So with our partner Boomi, we have one for MuleSoft Anypoint, and we're just coming out with one for SAP Integration Suite, which will
for those that
be.
don't know what iPaaS stands for, by the way, it's
Oh,
Integrated
sorry.
Platform as a Service, and yeah, it just
Yes.
allows you to do all that kind of integration work, transformation. I need to talk to Salesforce and Workday and Splunk and whatever, right? It basically allows you
And
to
Solace.
connect anything to anything, and Solace, obviously, yeah.
Right.
But moving away from a kind of a more traditional point-to-point or RESTful kind of just like one-to-one interaction to more of on Solace,
Yeah.
more of an event-driven interaction, right? So yeah,
Exactly.
very cool
Exactly.
mashup of capabilities there.
Yeah. So on the SAP side, we're just coming out with one for Integration Suite, which um, we'll be offering in two different modes. One is with Advanced Event Mesh, which is a product by SAP, and then also with self-managed or Solace Cloud Solace brokers. So there'll be two versions of that same adapter for the integration suite, but and that'll be coming out in the next couple of weeks. So look forward to that. But today I wanted to talk mostly about what we refer to as the self-contained connectors. And this is a brand new family of connectors that we've come out with in the last year. And we're continuing to build connectors as quickly as we can with various different teams. We have a couple of different teams building these things. So we're trying to build some velocity around creating brand new connectors for you guys. So these self-contained connectors they're referred to as self-contained connectors because they are literally self-contained. They're standalone. I know it's pretty cool there. How we
Well,
name
as compared to
exactly
the
what it
broker,
does.
the RDP connectors that we've had for quite some time, right? Like that's something else I guess we should
Yeah,
probably
so the
mention is all
RDP
our
connectors are
cloud native
they're based
services.
on REST APIs, endpoints, and they're great for because you don't need any extra infrastructure, right?
Yeah, it's
Those
in the
those
broker.
connectors are
Yeah.
built into the broker and allow you to use their REST APIs to mostly egress from Solace into another service like Amazon S3 or something like that, right? So these self-contained connectors are slightly different. They are standalone pieces of infrastructure that each are distinct products unto themselves. So there's a self-contained connector for IBM MQ, TIBCO EMS, Google PubSub, Snowflake, Debezium, various others, right? MQTT, JMS. There's a bunch. I can kind of talk about them a little bit. So these are each products unto themselves. They only do one thing. They either from Solace to the other service like MQ, or from MQ to Solace, and that's a product. That's a self-contained connector. But the reason that they're sort of called self-contained is because they are standalone in that they provide their own runtime. They provide their own shared services across the connector itself. So they all share a common deployment model. So either as an image or a container image or as a standalone, something you could put into compute like a VM or something like that. They all share the same kind of capabilities around HA and how they scale. They all share a common Spring-based configuration model. So different configuration, but all the same type of configuration. And then they all provide sort of things that you need to get them running and monitor them over time. So like health checks, access to logs, external metrics export, just metrics internally, but then also you can automatically export them to other services, like we're going to see a little bit later. And these are all free to use, but are available with a Solace support program or subscription should you need to have them supported. So common framework or common architecture across all of these things, but they're standalone in that they do one and only one thing each as a unit.
So very standardized setup here. So it's all Java, it's all Spring, you said, and
yeah.
And
the connectors themselves are Spring Boot applications,
right?
And the architecture, if you look on the left here, it's called a binder because we're using the Solace PubSub Plus binder for Spring Cloud Stream binder.
Spring Cloud Stream
on the Solace side, and then we either create or use another binder on the other side. So it's Spring Cloud Stream through our framework for processing, and then another Spring Cloud Stream binder as the target. And you can flip, where Solace is in that. We're either a source or a target, or the other service is the source of the target. In most cases, in the case of Debezium, we're only a target, so Solace is only a target because we only do the CDC to the event mesh. And in the case of Snowflake, it's only Solace to Snowflake. It's not the other way around. Right. So that's how they go. So important that the deployment of these really means that you can focus your infrastructure on exactly where you need the compute to be. And this is different than some of our competitors who have a cluster of connector compute capability, and they throw all of their connectors into that one cluster. This is a little bit more focused on putting the compute where you need it, because you might have a MQ load that's much higher than your Google PubSub load, for instance. And if they're deployed to different containers with different resource allocations and different scaling, then you can more easily tailor your deployment to where you need it.
Yeah, you can fine tune and not just for compute, but maybe for latency as well, right? You want to have it closer to a particular source or a sink for performance reasons, maybe.
Exactly. And we really think that these connectors belong very close to the source systems, right? So if I'm behind a firewall and a corporate network for my MQ estate, right? Those are typically not exposed to very many networks. No, I can put my my PubSub Plus connector very close to the MQ, and then have it output to the Solace brokers that are perhaps on a different network, but having it close to the sources is generally the best way to deploy them.
Yeah, because we can do things with like windowing and whatnot to have like kind of a very high throughput guaranteed messaging stream coming from that API into Solace. So
yeah, and these are mostly focused on guaranteed messages. I'm glad you brought that up. There is elements of direct messaging as well, but in general, we mostly focused only on guaranteed messaging, because you can think of these as more like bridges or like I said, edge connectivity to these services, which usually that is persistent data rather than transient data.
Generally don't want to lose this stuff. Shout out, hi Andrew, how's it going? Look at that hair, your hair's grown. How you doing? How's it going? Ahmed from Paris, hello, welcome, good afternoon. Oh, our first question of the day here. Does Solace provide an API gateway? Well, that's it's a bit off topic for the connectors, but we can, I don't know, Andrew, do you want to half answer that? I can half answer that, or
I prefer you half answer that, because I know we have some plans here, but maybe you know more.
I'll just say that as of right now, Solace does provide a REST API for messaging, but it's not a gateway. So Solace is a event-driven broker by nature, and in order to kind of provide access to that in a variety of ways, we do expose our messaging interface as a REST API. So you can post a message into the broker. You can have the broker post a message out to you, kind of via like a webhook, essentially. We have another mode that is called gateway mode, but it is very transparent, almost like a proxy type mode, where it doesn't really, it basically is used as a forwarding mechanism for REST requests. You can insert the Solace broker in the middle of an existing REST flow, and the messages will kind of essentially go wiretapped through the broker, and you can do some kind of cool pub stuff with that. But kind of true API gateway functionality, no, Solace doesn't have that. So it's kind of a yes and no, depending on what you're looking for kind of answer. And I don't know, do we have any partnerships or anything that can maybe speak to
Yeah,
that?
so we do partner with Gravity, right?
Mm,
And there is definitely work underway with Gravity to sort of expand what the partnership can bring. So I would say it's fairly early days for that, but we
yeah.
definitely are going down that route because we've done a lot of work with async API, which is
Mm-hmm.
the event-driven alternative to the REST APIs, right? And so definitely the way that Gravity talks about REST APIs and event-driven APIs is very much in line with the way we talk about those. And so I
Yeah.
think that there's probably going to be
Event-driven
some
APIs.
some further, yeah. So there's definitely
Yeah.
going to be some further stuff that you will see in that area, I can imagine.
And it's more than just the runtime gateway. It's the whole kind of management aspect around RESTful APIs. Developers, do code generation. They use catalogs. They search for what's available, um, and we see our event portal as the asynchronous kind of contra kind of to that, right? The complementary, and ideally. I think we're hoping in the future to have kind of like a unified view. Developers can go, it's a one-stop shop for both request reply, polling RESTful APIs or gRPC or whatever. And then
Mhm.
also the asynchronous kind of, here's a socket, here's a URL, connect to this, and we'll just push data out to you in an asynchronous way. Um, so yeah, a very roundabout answer, yes and no. Come ask if you want more details. Come hit up the Solace community, solace.community. That's
Yeah,
where
for
people like
sure.
Andrew and myself hang out, and we can help answer more questions. And all right, cool, I got it. Thanks for the detail. You're welcome. All right, Andrew,
Cool.
back over to you.
Yeah, so I have another slide just next, but we're introducing another product on top of the available connectors. And this is called Connector Manager, for want of a better name. It's PubSub Connector Manager. It may or may not change names at some point, but let's just say it's called Connector Manager now. It will be for its first GA, which is coming up in the next couple of weeks. So what this does, it's not, I want to emphasize that Connector Manager is not managing the life cycle of deploying, running, and tearing down and upgrading the actual connectors themselves. This is more of a administrative UI for monitoring the progress or monitoring the status of your entire deployment of self-contained connectors. And it also provides a centralized configuration management.
So you'd
So
still be running these things kind of like on different servers and terminals and
yeah,
whatnot.
you're still responsible for starting and stopping the connectors and then deploying them where you need to. The long term vision, I mean, the long term vision for this is definitely that these will reside inside of our Solace Cloud iPaaS offering or
Right.
SaaS service rather. Sorry. So you can imagine in the same way that the Solace Cloud manages the life cycle of brokers, that it will also manage the life cycle, deployment,
Yeah.
provisioning, deployment, running, monitoring, and then upgrade, and then termination of your connectors as well
Connectors.
as your brokers, right? And make it much easier to sort of manage an entire estate of Solace connectors and brokers, which link together in the event mesh. So you can
Yeah.
definitely envision that happening, but at this point, this is more akin to the broker manager UI that we have within a broker. Yeah, although it's a little bit higher level because it actually will do multiple connectors, not just one connector like Broker Manager does, or
Yeah,
Broker Manager does with brokers.
I can see, like, obviously, in a proper enterprise wide, just like you could have hundreds, thousands of connectors all over the place. I mean, it could be quite a handle,
Yeah.
a thing to keep
So
a
in this
handle on.
slide, I have just 5. But if you
Yeah.
envision on the left-hand side, we provide a management endpoint for each one of the connector instances that's run. So you can hit their endpoint, and I'll show you that in the demo. But you can hit their endpoints and get the data that's that your need for monitoring or health checks and that kind of thing. But if
Hmm.
you're going to do it that way, you'd need to hit in your web browser all
Lots
5
and
of
lots
these
of,
individually,
yeah.
right? You'd have to log into each one of them. You'd have to see their data. Uh, Plus, on the bottom here, you'd also have to manage their configuration files individually, like in some process that you have, and it could be something very solid, but it also could just be a bunch of files on somebody's disk, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so
People always
with
start
Connect,
small, right? It probably is all individual at first, and then it just grows and grows and becomes a
yeah, I
monolith.
mean,
So
certainly as we see people sort of kicking the tires on some of these connectors, they're running their connectors from the samples folder that we distribute with the connector. But
yeah.
obviously, if you're going to have, 5, 10, 100 of these things running, then you probably don't want to manage those from individual folders in individual deployment zones, right?
And
So go ahead.
am I right in guessing that the manager is not as free as the connectors themselves? Like, this
It's
is
a
this
good
an
point.
add-on? Well, I'm
Yeah,
just
so
guessing, but
the connector manager is included with paid support,
okay.
right?
Oh,
So
okay.
should you decide that you either want connector manager or you would like commercial Solace support for your connector deployments, and we sell it by active workflows, which is basically only workflows or only pipes of data. A workflow is basically a source processing target, and you
Okay.
can have 20 of them per connector instance. And we sell them based on the number of active flows that you have going from a source to a target. Okay.
Okay. So you don't pay for
So
standby ones like in an HA
you don't pay
configuration? Is
for
that what you're saying?
standby. You don't pay for
Hmm.
ones that you don't need support on. You don't pay for, you can choose sort of at what point you need support for these, and then it just kicks in. So it's, if you've gone beyond sort of like community, before you've purchased a support subscription, if you just want to sort of banter back and forth on Solace community, then you can do that. But once you need sort of support, or where you would like to deploy Connector Manager, then
Yeah.
then it becomes a supported product.
Cool.
But thank
So
you
we got
for
a few questions.
asking that.
I just want to get to them
Yeah,
before we start to like fall behind too much.
yeah.
First from Deshant, I think we're going to cover this a bit later, but what type of monitoring does the connector manager do?
Yeah,
That is, does it
let me
collect
talk
metrics from
about
the connectors?
that later. So there's
Yep.
automatic metrics within the connectors themselves, but then they can be automatically exported to lots of third parties. And I'm going to show you it
We're going to see
inside
that.
of Prometheus
Yeah.
with
Live
Grafana.
demos. Yeah. All right.
Yeah,
Um, Running Roach in Hong Kong, TIPCO C connector, please. Okay, I get it. So yeah, the big TIPCO estate there in Hong Kong, please. Hard to get people off that dinosaur without an easier path. So, I mean, yeah, I've known quite a few customers that have written their own bridges, from EMS, from RV,
yeah,
just manually. But sometimes people are just like, we want a vendor supported product. Here we go. So, and we're
yeah.
actually
So
going to
our
see it as
TIPCO
well. I think,
connector is JMS to EMS,
right.
right? So that's how we do that, and it's both ways. If you still
Are we
need to
considering
feed
something for
Solus data
RV?
back
Because,
into EMS, you could do
right.
that.
Are we thinking about RV? I mean, I know that we have customers still using RV out in the trading floor and other places.
No,
Not yet?
but there
Okay.
is. My understanding is that there's, and I'm not super deep on the TIBCO world, but my understanding is there's bridges from EMS to RV, and if you do that, then you could get the RV data onto the EMS, which we could then bridge over.
Sure.
We've looked at RV. Unless there's a significant customer demand, I don't see us doing it,
Mm,
but we
yeah.
could.
Okay. I got a question about a little bit, not related to the self-contained connectors here, but can you talk through the Solace AnyPoint connector with MuleSoft? I can't
Any particular?
personally, but
So
we have
the
one.
endpoint connector is essentially the model of it is the same that we have with all the iPads. There's a consumer that can be run as a start shape or a starter. So it's a daemon that runs, and you can do direct or guaranteed messages on that. We also have a schedulable in MuleSoft. We just added a schedulable kind of pull consumer that's on a listener. So you could do batches, small batches periodically, which was a request by a couple of our larger customers. And then there's also then publishers or producers on the other side. We will publish to, you can choose whether it's a direct message or whether it's a guarantee or a persistent, and you can publish to a topic or a queue. We obviously prefer the model where you read from a queue and you publish to a topic with guaranteed messages. That opens up the possibilities of pub sub. So it's always the mantra of Solace is that you do guaranteed messages, listen to a queue or read from a queue and publish to a topic.
That's right.
And there's also an extra facility within the iPaaS connectors, which is a standalone acknowledgement. Actually, there's two things that are unique. There's a standalone acknowledgement shape, which allows you to acknowledge the source message back to the broker before completing the rest of the things that are in your MuleSoft flow. And that allows you to sort of say something like, one of the examples is, I'm reading something from Solace. I want to deposit that into a database, and then I want to send out an email that says, "Hey, it's we successfully saved that into a database." I mean, probably wouldn't do an email for every database, right? But anyways, that's I'm gonna stick with that use case anyways, example. Right? Yeah. So but the problem with having that all in one flow is you could be successfully writing it to the database and then fail on the email, which is the trivial part of it, right? And then that would then back out the whole thing and you get the message redelivered. But the problem is that database write probably happened. There's no way to back it out unless you were using transactions. So the way that the ACK works is you would take this standalone ACK shape and put it after the database write, so that when that database write was successful, we would acknowledge the message back to the Solace broker, and it's gone and it's taken care of, and it won't get to redelivered anymore. And then if that email fails, that's more something you deal with on the MuleSoft side rather than making this message get redelivered back on the broker, right? Because it's the non-essential part of that flow, right?
So our connector is available in MuleSoft. It's just like in their panel.
Yeah. So the way that you obtain it is through the Anypoint Exchange, and so it is an approved MuleSoft certified connector. And when they do that, they take first line support calls for that as well, and if necessary, escalate it to Solace after that. But yeah, you download it from the MuleSoft Exchange. You import it into your IDE or Anypoint Studio, and you can do it through there. And it is freely available from Anypoint Exchange.
Cool. So we have a few more questions about monitoring, which I guess again we'll get to a little bit later, and starting to talk about telemetry as well. I mean, so Solace released support for distributed tracing earlier this year, and I'm sure Andrew is going to mention how the connectors tie into that a little bit later, right?
Maybe? You're sure of that? Are you sure of that?
I don't know. I'm not sure. So yeah, we'll talk about metrics forwarded to Dynatrace. I don't know if we support Dynatrace specifically, but you mentioned Prometheus earlier and a couple others. And question from Ahmed here: could we trace a message from Kafka Connect to sync to Solace to Kafka Connect source or any other consumer using open telemetry as well? So yeah, we have our Kafka source and sync connectors as well. I mean, we have so many different connectors now.
Yeah, but they're not necessarily instrumented with.
Those are not. Yeah, exactly. Those are not necessarily with the DT.
So what's needed in all those cases
is
the ability to do context propagation, right? Our underlying API for most of these connectors is JCSMP, which is our
Let's
oldest Java
let's
API.
define context propagation just for those who maybe
Yeah.
don't know.
So the way that it works is that when a broker, uh, there's a when a broker has published a message, it creates a certain set of headers, which are the
IDs,
context, right?
and
Or it's
IDs,
like,
yeah.
so it's information about the published message, like like a message ID, some timing, some environmental information about where it came from, that kind of thing. And on the broker, if you publish something to PubSub Plus with distributed trace enabled, it will create a receive span, and a receive span will be this context plus the span information, and that is published up to an OTel collector through
Collector,
our
yeah.
the translator there. Can't remember what that's called right now. Receiver? No. Um, anyways, there's a translation from a Solace message to an OTel
Hotel,
a span, right? And then that's received at a collector, and then published or visible on dashboards from
but it's that
Jaeger
end-to-end
or
context that you need, right? Like not
yeah.
just each little
Well,
span.
that'll create the broker context, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then as you then consume that message in a later application, like a connector, right, which is a consumer of that message,
And then
the
republishing
broker
somewhere else,
will create
ideally.
a send span as well.
Mm-hmm.
But once it's over to your application, we have the ability to pass that context. And the requirement is that JCSMP, which is the receiving client API, needs to have access to the context. And we have a helper library for JCSMP that allows you to receive that in a way that you can then use it further in OTel tooling.
Mm-hmm. But it's manual. It's currently manual instrumentation.
It's
right?
currently manual. Like it will come over to your consumer, but most of the connector frameworks or most of the connector integration tooling, they don't have tooling in place right now to be able to do the necessary OTel span creation. And we are looking at how to make this more automated in our because when we have this helper library for JCSMP, if you're just writing your own JCSMP application, well, then you're responsible for taking that context and making it known to your OTel dashboard, right? Yeah. By creating your own spans that like completely outside of the realm. We gave you the context, but how you want to make a span out of your own application is up to you, right?
Yeah.
So the connectors are sort of in that space right now. They're custom JCSMP applications that need to figure out how to raise these spans in a way that is sort of compatible with the way that the broker raises spans for OTel dashboards. So that's the short answer. Long way of saying that it's coming.
It's not yet. I was going to say the summary there is it's obviously something that people are going to be very interested in, bridging across between different brokers. I sent it, I didn't receive it, blah blah, I got a dupe or whatever, proving why or how that happened. We are going to be doing distributed.
Yeah, one of the aspects of this is that's unique to say our self-contained connectors and Spring applications is that there's this project called Micrometer, which is what we pull in for our metrics export that has sort of automatic telemetry built into it. And so we're experimenting now with how we could do metrics export automatically from the connectors because they're already integrated with Micrometer. Like Micrometer is already exporting metrics.
Cool.
It's also got a sort of a sub library or of exporting OTel telemetry as well. So we are looking into how that fits within our connectors right now.
So thank you for all the questions out there. I just want to say, Andrew, we're at the 20 minutes left.
Okay.
And
we should probably get
unlike last month where I ran over horribly by about 45 minutes because I was not aware of the time. And apologies to anybody who had to watch my office hours last month all about partition queues and demos. I want to keep Andrew on track here, so
Yeah,
let's
I
keep
want,
going.
and I want to do some. I want to do some live
Some
demos.
demo.
Although,
We want to see those
yeah.
metrics. Yeah. All right.
So let's just quickly talk about what's available and what's going to be available soon, right?
Yeah.
These are all actually available in some form right now. There are other ones coming. So there's going to be a new release of the Google Pub Sub at the end of this month. We're working on. There already is a Debezium CDC, but we're working on a subsequent release of Debezium that focuses on a connector per database type. And we're starting with Debezium for Postgres, and then we'll move on to Oracle and the other databases. So we're kind of separating it from what we have now, which is a Debezium connector for everything that Debezium supports, to ones that are focused on the individual backends, which I think will be a little bit easier to deploy and manage and stuff like that. We have Snowflake. We have database. I call it CRUD because it's not using CDC. It's using more data access statements and inserts and selects, Salesforce, files, be they on SFTP sites or FTP, MQTT brokers, bridging to their queues, Kinesis, and there's a whole bunch on the roadmap. Basically we want to have a lot of these things, and so that's
these are most of these are available now. You're saying actually, so
all these ones in the list are actually available right now in some form.
And where do people find these? Where do people find these
so
connectors?
I thought I had this on the slide. There's solace.com/connectors is our connector hub.
I just wanted you to confirm that before I posted it.
Look
So
at that.
there's that's the link to the so that's our hub. Our
you were the host with the most, man. Look at that.
I try.
That's awesome.
It's easy when
so
I don't have to
that's
try.
where you can download most of them there. Some of them are not available on download there, but certainly if you post something on the community asking where the download for those connectors are, or we're trying to catch up with the downloads. I'm a little bit behind in some of that aspect, but if you can't download it from the connector hub, just asking community where you can find it, and we'll provide a download link for you. And
cool.
We'll get that better over time for sure.
Okay, so there's a few things that are still kind of a bit on demand, I gotta say. So.
Oh, on demand, yes.
All right.
I'm probably going to have to re-log into a bunch of these services, so I'm just
we've been chatting for a little while.
We've been talking too long, right? Okay. Oh, maybe not as many as I thought.
Oh. We got some Grafana dashboards here, looking good.
Yeah. Oh, well, look at that. I guess I haven't been talking as long as I thought.
Well, yeah, most things are still logged in. So
those are you're concerned about security. I'm definitely not typing admin.
Admin, no, that's right. It's a different file.
Definitely not. Okay, so what I wanted to sort of talk about today was I want to start on Connector Manager. So there's a time right there.
So this is your kind of across all your connector visualization of what's running and kind of where.
Right. So if I take a top level view of Connector Manager, I can see that on this instance of Connector Manager, I have 3 different connectors. Connector is defined as a unique configuration file. So if I'm starting up an active standby, I use the same configuration file for both the active and the standby. That's considered one connector, but I have 4 instances here because the MQ one is deployed in an active standby. So I have 2 instances running. One of them is active and the other one is hot standby. Okay. And different than our brokers, you can actually have multiple hot standbys here. You could have unlimited number of standbys here if you thought that was needed. So I could have 1 active and say 2 standbys, and then if that active went away, one of those 2 standbys would become the active after a while. Okay, and then so I have MQ in active standby, and then I have a standalone Google Pub Sub connector, and I have a standalone TIBCO EMS. So let's take a quick look at the TIBCO one. This happens when you time out.
Live data, live demos.
Yeah.
That's
So So what you're seeing here is I've drilled down on the TIBCO instance, and this is the specific information about that instance. I would get a different view if I drilled down on the separate instances of the active standby, right? So I'd have access to the active one, and I would have access to the standby one as well. But if I'm looking at the TIBCO one, I'm just looking at the standalone. So there's a bunch of information available here. We're just quickly going to have a look. So there's metadata that you can pass in tags. So if you want to organizationally sort of tag these as, this belongs to X department, or this is accessing, or this is sitting on a particular node or something like that, or some network information you'd like to do, you can pass in your own business related tags onto the
Can you
start of
specify
them.
multiple tags? Like I'm just thinking.
Yes,
Like
you
in
can. Yeah.
enterprise, you
So
might
I
have
only
like
have one here, which is this
server,
the
app,
version.
country, prod, dev. There could be a
Yeah,
bunch
anything
of
you want to add, there's a space in the configuration for when you start up a connector instance that will pass tags to the connector manager.
Are those searchable through the manager? Like if you want to find all.
Yes. Look at you asking questions that we didn't prep. Look at that.
Well, I mean, I've worked on-site support at many customers, and like having these kind of estate management tools, being able to search and whatever. Even using
yeah.
AWS, like for all my EC2 instances globally, that doesn't have the best searching
There you
and
go.
cataloging kind of thing. So
So I think that was searching on the tag. I don't know for sure because
you don't have to do it.
in
I
both.
just say
Yeah.
yes. You guys are thinking about these things, which is good.
This is where I get set up by Aaron. So on the right hand side is the health checks, and this is multiple sorts of hierarchy. So it's instance down to the individual binders, down to each one of the binders. So there's the JMS binder and the Solace binder, down into some of the things like a basic ping to the server, and then the individual workflows. In this case, I'm only using one workflow, but it happens to be up. So everything's up, and it's a hierarchy. If something was down, it would float back up to this top, and it would say that it was one or more instances are down. And so there's a bunch of information about the actual Linux process that's running right now. So I have these all running on the same Linux x64 server, but that would be whatever your PID is for your JVM that's running this particular connector instance.
I meant to ask you a really quick question about deployment. Like, so these are all Java apps. Can you run them as standalone Java apps, or is it only in containers?
Yeah, so we provide the self-contained connectors in two basic formats. One of them is a standalone jar that you can run. We provide some scripts and stuff like that of how you run them, but basically they're Java minus jar, which are running within a JVM. And then we also supply a container image, which you can import into Podman or Docker or Kubernetes.
Sure.
However you deploy your containers, that has basically a Red Hat container image with a JVM in it that then also has our jar, and it sort of runs it within that container.
So it's a very probably basic little container with just here's the JDK, here's the connector,
yeah,
and
exactly.
same kind of Java jar run. Okay.
In fact, I've had customers basically eschew the image that we gave them because they didn't want to use the Red Hat image. They wanted to use their own sort of sanctioned image, and so they just wrote their own Docker file, which brought
package
in
however you want. Yep.
Yeah, which brought in
That's
our
cool.
jar, and the configuration was built in, and they used the image that they wanted and the JVM that they wanted, right? So you don't have to even use our image. We've started shipping a Docker file to make it a little bit easier, but essentially this is you just take the jar and its dependencies and put it into a container that has a JVM, and then you're good to go.
Cool. Okay.
So live information about the actual machine it's running on, and some information about the JVM itself, like garbage collection and memory.
Look at that heap.
Yeah.
Sawtooth, Java, JVM.
Sawtooth heap. Yeah, it's doing the garbage collection, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right, and then there's access to the individual metrics. So we expose these metrics. So there's a drop-down list of all the metrics that are exposed, and some of them are environmental, some of them are about the specific workflows. Like down here, you see the Solace process ones, which are talking about the individual workflows that are running. So if I had more than one workflow here, I would have other inputs and outputs rather than just the one that I'm running here. And then you can add those, and then you get a kind of an live updating view of these down here. So I don't think
In
I
the
have any
manager.
data
So you're just adding
running
to
right now,
this
so
kind
these
of
aren't going to go
dashboard.
up or anything, but this is where you could do individual metrics. Right. And then you have access to the environment. So there's a whole bunch of information. We're going into all of it, but this is basically all the environment variables, all the Spring configuration, all the JVM information. Like there's a whole bunch of stuff in here about what reuser's running, where is it running from, just all kinds of stuff in there.
Wow, maybe more
There's
than
a lot, and you can filter these too, right? If I'm only interested in, say, right, sort of, you could do it by keyword, by taking those,
Solace
hundreds
related,
of environment things down to just what you're interested in, right? So that's all
cool.
searchable. So then there's access to the actual logging. So this is access to the live logging of that particular connector instance. And you can imagine a situation where maybe the connector instance is not performing as well as it should, and you want to go in and you want to turn up the logging on a particular, right? Sorry, I don't know why it should be configured, but anyways, so you might want to turn up the binder logging to a trace level temporarily, so that it will trace it will increase the amount of information in the log temporarily. When I reboot this, or if I reboot this is not a permanent change, right? It'll go back to however I configured it, or I can bring it back to just Warn if I want to as well.
That's cool. Is that log4j? Is that some other tooling?
This is logback, which is the default logger for Spring.
Okay.
I just noticed I must have not configured this properly. There is usually a drop down for. Let me see if I have it on my MQ. There is usually a drop down for the actual log file itself, right?
Oh, okay.
So it's a configuration thing. I do have some errors there, so maybe we don't need to look at that. But you do have, in addition to setting the levels of the log, you have access to the live log file, and you can download that. It'll bring it into a separate browser window, and you can save that or copy and paste that anywhere, right? So it makes it very useful for drilling down. Maybe you notice that there's something that's not right with the metrics. You can drill down into the logs.
Prometheus is having some problems there, looks like.
Yeah. Oh, you know what it is that's what it is. I had set up the MQ for Prometheus and I didn't configure it properly. And then I moved on to just enable
missing
it for,
some class path jars. Yeah. All right.
Yeah. So I just moved on to configure it for TIBCO because I wanted to show TIBCO. And so that's what's going on there. So don't worry about that. It's nothing fundamental to the use of the.
So that's a lot of metrics, configuration, all sorts of stuff that's available, visible, centralized. I guess that goes back to that slide you were showing before. Like you'd have to log into each individual place without the connector manager. Yeah.
Right.
That's cool. Okay.
And so the only other thing I want to show you, there's some more configuration stuff where you can actually download the configuration, but this is your workflow view, and you can actually do some lightweight administration here. You could actually start and stop workflows. So if for some reason you wanted the data to stop flowing through your, in this case, it's going from, I think it's going from, input one is an EMS queue, and it's writing to a Solace topic. And so if I wanted to stop that flow, I could just actually click the stop sign here and then restart it if necessary as well. If Solace is on the source, you can actually pause a workflow. And we're working to make the JMS binder do the same. But for right now, it's start or stop with JMS on the source. But you can actually pause a workflow in the Solace case, which means it won't try to reconnect, or it won't drop the connection. It will just stop the flow.
Which means you shouldn't get any redeliveries or anything like that, right? So,
correct, right? If you stop a workflow chances are the messages in flight will get redelivered, right? Because
Right.
they're in flight, right? Right. So that is what I wanted to show as far as connector manager. There is this journal tab, which is basically all the events that happen to individual um, connector instances. So it's more of a kind of it's an event system of what's happening to the connectors.
That's nice.
So if you unregister or it does it for a starting and stopping, it'll say there's an event that gets generated for when it's down, that kind of thing. So what I wanted to show was,
let's look at some graphs. I want to see some
yeah,
pictures.
just real quick. This is the view that you would get if you went manually to each one of these connector instances to go down certain routes. So if I went to, like I was just on the workflows view, if I went to this one,
so I guess this is why I saw Tomcat kind of like metrics being available in the connectors, because Tomcat is used to expose all these REST endpoints for these kind of metrics.
Exactly.
Right?
So yeah. Those of you familiar with Spring Boot, there's a project called Actuator, which provides a lot of sort of what they call enterprise features to a Spring Boot application. What Actuator does is exposes these endpoints and deploys a Tomcat server to service them. And so that's what we have going on here. But this is what you would see for that same workflow view that I saw within the connector manager, which is a lot prettier in connector manager, right? Oh, cool. Forgot that. Okay, we're not going back to that. So the other thing I wanted to show was, this is further to the metrics question. So in my configuration for TIBCO, I have exposed Prometheus. So I have Prometheus true, and I've exposed it as an endpoint. Okay. So for the TIBCO EMS connector, I have Prometheus exports running, and you can, for those
so it's all the configuration you need. You just have to say Prometheus.
Yeah, that's all. And actually, Prometheus is the hardest one because for those who are familiar with Prometheus's architecture, it's a pull or a scrape rather than a push, right?
Which is annoying to me, but
right. So we have to expose an endpoint / actuator or / Prometheus here to be able to service the scrape. So what is Prometheus what is the endpoint that it needs to scrape? That's what the configuration did. It exposed this endpoint. For things like Influx or Dynatrace or Datadog or all the other things that Micrometer supports, it's just basically 2 or 3 lines of where do I push it to? And what are the credentials for pushing it there? Cool. Right? So so I have a video. I didn't think to put it, maybe we could put it in the show notes. I have a video on solace.com on the blogs, on the resources section, which shows me configuring the IBM MQ connector for Prometheus and for InfluxDB. So Prometheus being a scrape and then InfluxDB being just simply a push. Okay, but this is the data that Prometheus will read off of my server, which is the scrape endpoint. So this is all formatted in a way that Prometheus understands.
Cool.
So then if I went over to Prometheus, I could have access to, I have access to all the metrics that are exposed. So this is one of them, and I'm doing a rate. So this is basically going to compute messages per second over particular intervals. And I'm just so that we have something to view in these graphs. I'm just going to, I have this JMS toolbox. I just have this very simple thing that publishes a bunch of messages.
Yeah, we need some data here.
EMS. What's that?
Yeah, I was just saying we need some data to look at. We need some.
Yeah, so I'm just going to, and this is going to be very low volume or low rate because it's actually going to log each one, so it's very slow. But that's fine because I actually want it to, I don't really want to see this. So what I want to see is I want to see this. If I execute this again, you'll see that now I have data.
Oh, it's spiking. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's, it's not publishing them very fast. It looks like probably a
Point
couple per
point
second or
six.
something like that,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So, anyways, but then Prometheus isn't great for viewing its own data. What you really want to do is you want to bring it into something like Grafana.
Yeah.
And then Grafana has the capability of actually graphing things
Yeah.
in a much better way, dashboards. So in this case, what I'm doing is this. This is a this is the same calculation. This is a rate over time, and it seems to be peaking at about 12 and a half messages a second, which is probably what I'm publishing at. And
Mhm.
then this over here is another metric on the same instance, this EMS instance, and it's showing my process usage. So it spiked a little
Very low
bit.
though, 3%.
Yeah, it's very very low because each individual workflow isn't super expensive. If I had all 20 workflows going, maybe it would be higher, probably 20 times higher because they're all
Right.
separate threads. But overall, it's these are relatively lightweight stateless connectors that just connect 2 points of data to each other, right? So,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
so that, yeah, so that's the export to Prometheus. If I go over to just to answer, there was a question earlier about
This is the
Dynatrace, I think it
I'll
was.
give you the this is the 5-minute warning, so we'll just do a little
Yeah,
Dynatrace
uh,
show here and then we'll
I'm
wrap
pretty,
it up.
yeah, I'm pretty much finished.
Cool.
So so we use Micrometer, which is a project associated. It's not directly part of Spring, but it is associated with Spring in a lot of ways. I think the team is also works for the former Pivotal team, so I think that it's all very much oriented towards Spring. But here's a list of all the exports that we get for free, right? All you need to do is a couple lines of configuration in your connector config, and you can output to any of these endpoints. So I'm using Prometheus. I've also done Influx. I've also done Datadog. I don't own Dynatrace, so I haven't tried it. I have tried JMX. Um,
That's cool.
Right. And so so I wanted to show this too, because this is how we would get the telemetry, right? Because
Hmm.
if you think of the other parts of Micrometer, so there's metrics export, which is what we're seeing right now, but there's also observation and tracing,
Hmm.
which are all, and context propagation, which are all parts of how you would, propagate context from the broker or to the broker, raise those as spans within your dashboards, and then feed it with information about what's happening inside the connector. In addition to then to piece together an end-to-end thing about publisher, broker, consumer, which is the connector, and then what's happening inside the connector. Like maybe there's a processing span that you create about what we did to the message, and then a span for publishing it to the end target, and then it's up to that end target about whether they support continuing the propagation of this event or whether that's a termination point, right?
Right.
Because that's tooling out, that's like Snowflake or something like that, right? So what they support, we would pass a context that they could use, but what would they do? Are they also instrumented with Micrometer or some other OTel or uh, capability,
That's
right? So
that's cool. I like playing around with monitoring tools. I haven't actually looked at Micrometer very closely, so I'm inspired now from your ease of integration with all these different things here. Um,
yeah, like I said,
we have
like this was truly 3 lines of code to make
yeah.
it to make it expose that Prometheus scrape.
So
It's
Micrometer handles that
this
Prometheus
one.
kind of facade there for it to scrape. I mean, that's it's all just built in. That's
Yes,
cool.
exactly. Right.
Wow.
So that's all part of, and the only other trick that is that you need to bring in the proper Micrometer libraries into your
Yeah.
libs folder when you're starting
And
the
tell it
connector.
what
But
you want to expose and
yeah, but
how
that's a
often.
one-time thing. We
Yeah.
already include the Micrometer core, so you don't need that. You just need the specifics for it, like the Prometheus jar or the
Cool.
Influx jar, right? But usually it's 1 or 2 jars and that's it.
Related monitoring question from Deshant here. Does the manager do any alerting? within the actual manager itself, or would you?
It does. There is, and I don't actually have a configuration that shows that right now, but I have successfully done alerting, and it's done from that. Let me just go real quick back to here. Um,
I thought it was admin. Oh well, okay.
no, it's user pass on my
Oh,
on
user
my
pass for
manager.
that one. Okay, yeah.
So it generate events from these journal entries, right? So if you there will be a journal
Mm.
entry for let me very
Some kind of high
quickly.
threshold or
Yeah,
disconnect or
why don't I
something.
very quickly stop one of the uh, one of the connectors? I think I'm stopping the TIBCO one. So
I
now
assume
if
the
I
answer
go,
is you can do both too, right? I mean, you could have it alert here in the dashboard in the manager, but also for that.
yeah, so I guess what I was trying to
Um,
say, it's the journal will generate an event, which is this thing is down, and that event can be automatically exported to things like email,
right.
PagerDuty, and in my case, I tried
Slack.
it within Slack, and so
Yeah.
I will get a Slack message to a designated server and channel that says, you know, your instance is now down, and you can
Cool.
control sort of like because when you first come when you first start the when you first bring up a connector, it's immediately down, or the state is changes from unknown to up, right? And you can filter out the fact that it's going from unknown to up because you don't really care about that, and only be interested in certain state changes of the in the event.
Okay. So are you going to see it
So
down here? Is that what you're
I
shooting at?
was thinking we would, but haven't yet.
Maybe it's because you're missing some jars in your class path.
Uh,
Live demos.
yeah, I
Gotta
was hoping. I was
gotta
hoping to.
up,
Oh, there we go.
up, up. Some
Some
instances are
instances are down.
down. That's
Right.
very
And so
noticeable.
in in the journal, actually, did I kill the whole connector manager?
Oh boy.
Anyways, oh yeah. So here it's saying that one of my two, actually both I killed both of these IBM MQ
Awesome.
ones,
Yeah.
and so they're both down.
Well,
And
that's good to know.
there should be a journal entry for those. Live demo is not going to work here apparently. Uh, I think I might have killed my connector manager as well.
That's all right. That's all
I
right.
have
We're
about eight
it knew
terminal
we were
windows up, and wasn't
it
sure
knew
which
we
was
were
which.
done. Oh,
Yeah,
which
so
one's which? All right.
yeah,
So the answer is yes. It can
the
do that.
answer is yes, and we do it's through. I think it's through Actuator that it actually does it, and it's various services like PagerDuty, Slack, email, various different services like that. And the interface is very simple. So if you wanted to send alerts to a particular service that wasn't listed, it's probably 10 lines of Java that you would need to do
Yeah,
to implement that interface, and
that's
we
cool.
would be able to automatically export to that.
All right.
So I'm probably out of time, eh?
Yeah, we are. We're over. One last comment from Running Roach here. I guess to me, like when you're in HK, yeah, when I come to Hong Kong, I'll show you what we've done for JMX using Prometheus for broker monitoring. I love talking about Solace broker monitoring with anybody. So yes, any customers out there, if you want me to come over to your place of work and we can talk about Solace monitoring, happy to do that. And we have to do a developer workshop because that's my real job. But I'm always happy to talk about
Yeah, so
monitoring as
this
well.
will support JMX and Prometheus, so you can decide
Yeah,
how
cool.
you want to do it, but probably you want to do Prometheus directly. But if you're already exporting JMX and you're using it for other things and you're using that within Prometheus itself, then maybe it's the better way is to expose the JMX
Yeah.
instead.
All right. So yeah, we are 10 minutes over here, Andrew, but it has been a action-packed, fun-filled fact kind of hour with lots of questions from people out there. So I'm happy about that. You know, it's
Is
always I don't
there
mind running a bit over if
is there any
yeah, if
that
we
I
have.
didn't answer?
I think we got them all. I think we got them
Okay,
all. So
that's good.
um, and again, if not, people out there, if we did miss a question, be sure to head over to Solace community down at the bottom there,
Yeah.
solace.community. That's where
I don't want to toot
that's
my
where
own horn like I invented on ramp and off ramp, but I am
you're very
fairly active on the community.
you are
So
fairly active.
if you have any questions, feel free to just reach out there.
I go
There's a special section on the community for connectors and integrations. So I usually
good.
patrol there.
I go in and out in terms of I'm either on there a lot or I disappear for like a month because I'm working on some other stuff. I got to get a little bit more consistency. I know Mark's out there listening. He probably is agreeing with me right now,
Yeah.
but I will see you on the Solace community for sure. Um, Andrew, thank you very much for being here. Stay tuned next month. I think we're going to be doing DSemp, which is our basically our new version of Semp, which will kind of I don't know, basically allow you to configure the broker, say, this is what I want. It goes and sees what the broker currently has and will manage all that deltas and everything for you. So a declarative kind of configuration of the broker rather than our more traditional kind of you have to figure out what the changes are and stuff like that. So very excited. I think it's going to be Rob Tompkins from PLM doing that with me next month. But
Wow, he's like the YouTube. He's an influencer
he's
now, apparently.
yeah, he's been on my show I think more than anybody. So yeah,
It's
but Andrew,
crazy.
it's been great to have you. Any last words before we kind of like close it off here?
No, thanks for your time, everybody. Maybe there might be people that watch this after it's been recorded, but
Yeah, people do.
anyways, it was a
Yeah,
pleasure. Like I said, always available for questions. Very much interested in getting people using these connectors, any of our connectors, but the self-contained connectors in particular. Hit me up anytime.
all right. Thanks everybody. Have a great rest of your day. Have a great rest of September, and yeah, we'll see you next month. Thanks, Andrew. See you later.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye bye.